So after the reaction of my previous video on Destiny 2, thank you by the way for all the comments and feedback on that video, I wanted to spend more time with the new systems to see if I wasn't just knee-jerking my reaction and to find out myself the true issues. I found out two things. One, I have a serious problem with playing Destiny, and two, it's worse than I initially thought. Many people aren't bothering to come back. People who do play are becoming increasingly frustrated and leaving the game, and for myself, it feels very much like the soul of Destiny has been ripped out and replaced with this hamster wheel designed to keep us playing as long as Bungie needs. Am I being a little bit reactionary? Sure. Is it warranted? Yes. So allow me to talk about some of the issues that are causing these problems, and the first being the number one contender, the power grind. Getting to max power has always been something that most players do in D2. For years, however, it's been practically irrelevant. Bungie, however, treats the leveling process as content, which is part of the reason this new system sucks a lot, and it sucks the entire fun out of Destiny, at least for me and many others. Power in this new system is irrelevant in many ways. Always be lower power than the enemies to get the best rewarded score. Things will become slightly easier when you get higher through a bracket, but then you have to continue adding pointless modifiers to things to increase the score and rewards. All this new system does is essentially babygate tiers of loot for when you reach a certain number threshold. 200 to 300 gives you tier 2s with the chance of tier 3s, 300 gives you tier 3s with a chance of tier 4s, and 400 gives you tier 4s with a chance of tier 5s, and when you eventually hit 450, you are handed tier 5 loot like candy. As of this video, I have reached 400 power level, and it took me roughly 60 to 70 hours or so. That's 60 to 70 hours of running solo Caldera or solo K1 logistics with the odd other activity in between to be able to fill out my power level. Due to the way the drops work in the game, it's just the easiest and most efficient way to level if you just do the solo ops missions, because you get one drop every couple of minutes rather than having to spend 20 to 25 minutes to get multiple ones. It's just not worth your time. It's mind-numbingly boring though to have to do like 600 to 700 of these things. And that's not even the start of it. Just wait until you hit 400, because after, it gets worse. You then have to grind a further 100 plus hours to get all the way up to 450. The time investment here isn't in the chase for loot. It's the time investment of making the number go up. The game isn't a looter shooter at that point, it's just a number simulator. This becomes even worse when you consider that Renegades in a few months' time is going to shaft you right back down to 200 again, losing access to all of that higher tier loot. You also don't have the new gear modifier for all of the loot that you've got. Sure, you get to keep it, but you ultimately have to start that monotonous grind all over again. It's like they are trying to mimic the Diablo style seasonal resets, but emulating it in the worst way possible. Part of the reason you don't care about your loot as much in that game when you lose it is because they are essentially stat sticks, all used to enhance your build. In Destiny, you get attached to the loot that you use. You may not lose it, but when you reset, essentially, you lose the opportunity to farm the best gear in the game, all for Bungie to make you repeat it again for the sake of retention. And it's not that hard to get tier 4s and tier 5s when you get up to that point, so the challenge in the game has essentially been removed. I initially thought, okay, maybe being a higher power will add more challenge to the game, and getting a higher tier of loot will require some form of challenge, not just putting a load of modifiers on. You would think going and doing the highest difficulty of activity in the game, such as a 5 feet raid, would give you loads of tier 5 loot and unlock that ability once you've completed that challenge so you can farm that stuff from the raid. Why would you do that when you can just get to 450 or even 400, play one Crucible game, or even lose a match of Trials and get showered in tier 5s instead? Why go through the pain of doing something incredibly difficult when you can just go and lose a match in whatever you're doing, or just play the simplest activity and get the same level of loot? We can debate challenge and access to loot all you want, and gatekeeping and the difference between casuals and hardcores, but ultimately this is just behind a power grind. If you have enough time to be able to sink in, then you're going to eventually unlock it. However, I don't think this system is good for hardcores, and I definitely don't think this is good for the casual audience anyway, because imagine you only can play for 4 or 5 hours, and then eventually you get all the way up to tier 3, tier 4 loot, and that takes you a good 6 months time, and then you just get reset back down again. It's just not good at all. I want the point of Destiny, as I've said, to be the loot chase, the elation in getting a good drop, not having to fight to keep access to it. I also want to be challenged when I want to get my loot as well, such as like Grandmaster Nightfalls or completing harder feat raids so I can get the best loot in the game from those activities. It just doesn't feel rewarding at all. And this tweet from my friend Dan summed it up completely. Endgame content not rewarding gear worthy of endgame effort, regardless of your power level in this new Destiny 2 system, is asinine. This expansion, even with the stuff I like about it, feels like corporately mandated fun. This may be the biggest issue, but I think there's some other smaller issues that are definitely going to hurt Destiny more, and that is to do with the portal and also to do with the general systems that they've changed in the game. So let's hop over to Live Jimbo and actually talk about what these problems are. Now that I've had a chance to check out the portal more and interact with it a lot, I do think there's a lot of good that can come from the portal, but I do feel it lacks a little bit of the player agency that we had before, especially when it means that you can go anywhere in the game to do activities via portal. You used to go to the world tab, you would follow the different markers around, and you would eventually do Vanguard, you did your 9 strikes that you had, you would do Crucible, or you would do like Eternity that had to have this loot in here. You would have the raid of the week would be, highlighted. But now it's just gone in favor of this portal system. The number one problem I think the portal has, and this is kind of related to the power system, is that it has no incentive to run higher activities or longer activities. The rewards are just stingy across the board. Sure, you can play a solo quick play master solo ops playlist, you get 2 bonus drops, but you could be put into any one of the other ones that could take a longer period of time, which is why people default to Caldera or K1 Logistics. They were doing the Pinnacle Ops, being the Kells 4 mission, or Starcrossed in this case, but they were doing the Encore mission. That was bugged, and it was dropping 5 to 7 drops every time that you were leveling, which made it feel really rewarding, so everybody spammed it out. It took somewhere between the region of 10 to 15 minutes to do, so repeat that aspect and put it to every other part of the portal, that is when it comes to longer form missions. There is no point in doing an onslaught, which is here in Midtown. It takes 30 to 35 minutes to get 3 completion rewards, plus this bonus drop goes away after you've done it. You need to incentivize people to do activities that are longer by putting more loot in there, and then just keep the solo ops the way it is. 1 drop for 5 to 10 minutes, sure. Or you can spend another 15 to 20 minutes and get 7 drops, right, from a strike or from a pinnacle op or from a midtown. What it will mean is people will go and do different activities, and then one of the most common things I've seen is here. You could have a streak or a quest marker or something similar to this event marker here, and it would basically go, okay, you've done a solo, a fire team, a pinnacle, and then a crucible op, and then you are getting a massive bonus, and you could get a plus 10 power drop from any activity that you choose, or 3 plus 10s. Just make it rewarding to play different activities in the game, and it would feel even better, and it would probably help with the power grind a little bit more. However, there's a big focus on solo ops, obviously, but there's no lost sectors here at all. You can't farm extra exotics. You can't farm anything higher than tier 2 exotics, which I think is an absolute mistake. It is good that if you go to Neptune, for example, here, there is a lost sector on every single planet that you can go and do, but it doesn't drop on level, and they're just not to be seen. If you're a new player, you would never know these things are here because you would just see them in the portal. Put the lost sectors in solo. Just do it. It's easy. They have said that they're going to be adding more raid and dungeon or dungeon content in September, But we need like a dungeon or a raid here that's like on a rotation that people can do either every day or every week, or like even have a couple. Like you could have so many good things when it comes to pinnacle missions and the raid and dungeon content. You don't necessarily have to give us new tiered loot to begin with. And I think that's the problem that Bungie has, is because those older activities don't have tiers in them at the moment. Just drop them at a higher light level, at the light level that we're at, to give us a boost. It would be great to be able to use dungeons here. There's so many exotic missions that we've had in the past. Just give it, like, let's use them. Like, you can rotate them in and out. You can obviously take the Encore in and out, so you could do that here. The portal itself isn't inherently bad in how I feel, but I think there's a lot of improvement to be done. But the only thing that I will say that is a very big annoyance is the removal of season, like Grandmaster Nightfalls. They've been replaced with these. You can do them once per season. Once you get to 390 and 410, they will give really high power. Like when you get to this point, you can get tier 5s from this and tier 5s from this. But there's no grinding of Grandmasters. It's gone. They're all removed from the game. There's just nothing. There's no real challenge. Sure, I can go and do the inverted spire, and I can put a whole bunch of modifiers on it. If it's customized, I can put it all the way up to Grandmaster. But it's just not the same because there's no focused reward in the same sense. Yes, I may not want a jurisprudent, but it just doesn't feel the same. And I'll talk about more with vendors in just a moment. The end game in the game is essentially gone now. And I just feel like the power grind with the end game, with the portal, is just what Bungie's focusing on. And I feel like they've removed a lot of what a lot of end game players would do. The farming for materials would be the main thing, but there's like real no point anymore. But let's talk about one of my other bugbears, and that's investment loops and also vendor issues. Another issue that we can run into is the vendor refresh, because they've essentially soft sunset a lot of the weapons in the game. And if you go into any of the vendors now, you'll see the legacy gear, which these weapons are like pretty cool. There's some really strong rolls that you can get on like the Joxer's Longsword. Riptide is still pretty good. Unending Tempest, I've heard, is pretty decent as well. Randy's Throwing Knife. And obviously this costs Glimmer and Cause. And then you can get the old armor as well, but none of this is in the tier system. There's no way to, get this stuff. And if you actually look at the pool in Portal for the Crucible weapons, if you go and check out the rewards, the actual weapons that they've added and refreshed to the game are Stars in Shadow, Returned Memory, and Pure Recollection. All of these are in like the World Loot pool. So there's 3 new weapons that they've added, but there's no ability to dedicate focus to those weapons because you have to wait for them to either be in the rotation, like when we look at the portal right now, we can get the sidearm. So you're basically waiting to be able to get what you want. It's even worse when you actually go over to the Vanguard screen, because now, yes, they've soft sunset a lot of the weapons in the game, but there's no ability to focus for for Onslaught, I should say. So if I want to get a better Falling Guillotine, I can't get it anymore. And that's a shame. Yeah, cool that they've taken it out of the game, but I would have loved to have been able to do that. Even a Mountaintop or a Recluse, just to be able to get those rolls, because they're still in the game. Those activities are still in the game. With the Legacy gear, all the Nightfall weapons are gone now, so you can't focus any of the previous Nightfall weapons. You have to do these because you're not going to be able to upgrade these into the tier system. You maybe be able to enhance them, which is cool, but it's obviously not tiered yet. Maybe they'll up this in future. The only thing I haven't really tested out to see if there's actually like a dedicated Nightfall weapon, and if it rotates each week, is the Master activity, the Advanced, Expert, and Master. But I don't even know if these are Adept. I don't even know whether or not these are going to drop on a rotation every single week, whether or not we're going to get some Nightfall weapons from before. If I just go into my vault right now and check a weapon like the Lotus Eater, where there it is, the Lotus Eater, you're not going to be able to get this anymore. And it's one of the best weapons in the game, like the same as a bunch of the other weapons. It just doesn't feel overly good to not have a chase in the game? Sure. The tiered loot system is great. Some of the roles that you can get, tier 3, maybe even tier 4 and tier 5, like, are kind of insane when it comes to the stuff that you can do. That's not a problem, but Bungie needs to address this, because if there's no Grandmaster Nightfalls, like, that people loved chasing in the game, there's no Lost Sectors, there's no, like, rad content until September, then players are just going to be very, very limited in terms of what they want to do and where they want to invest their time, which is the loot system. I don't like arbitrarily grinding with the hope of getting the weapon I want. I want to dedicate time to that weapon to eventually get the role I specifically want. With all that being said and all that information down, I think one of the biggest things that is contributing to my displeasure with this new system and a lot of other players is just fatigue. The game is 8 years old at this point and it needs refreshment, and this is kind of a refreshment, but it needs a fresh start. We need a D3. We need a wholesale restart of all the systems, and I just don't think Bungie is going to commit to doing that. It's way too risky. I would rather them have tried this in a new game and then, like, worked it from going forward than trying to redo all of this in Destiny itself. I generally don't know how they are going to fix all of this in the next couple of months, and I'm hopeful that any form of feedback that the community gives will be some form of tweaks. I hope that they add actual content to the game and not just this power grind repeatedly. And my advice is get to 400 power and then leave it at that. Just grind out tier 4s and potentially get a tier 5, because the armor's pretty cool, some of the weapons are pretty cool as well, but I just don't think it's worth the amount of hours that you are putting in to get that reward. I'm not saying that it should be handed out to me, but it's just not feeling great, man. If it's not feeling great, regardless of how good the gameplay is in Destiny, you're going to have people that turn off, and that's not exactly what Bungie want. Thank you very much for watching the video. Hopefully this has been insightful and has shared some feedback. If you had some feedback, leave it in the comment section. Leave a like on the video as always. And thank you very much for your support on the last couple of videos. And this has been It's Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.